President Trump said that because of the killing of al-Baghdadi,
The president did something that we don't see U.S. presidents do. He used language that is going to really incite Baghdadi's followers.
Al-Baghdadi.
I hope he will tone down the rhetoric. There's no reason to gloat over it and insult
Baghdadi,
and let that video be a recruiting tool for ISIS or Al-Qaeda.
He called him a dog, said he died whimpering like a coward.
In the same area of the world where al-Baghdadi was.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome to a brand new broadcast edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. I am Brian Fisher, your host, congenial, convivial, amiable, and, according to some, effervescent.
As always.
Good to have you with us. Jeff Reed, broadcast engineer and producer, doing double duty today. Glad to have him alongside. Glad to have you as my congenial, convivial, and amiable listening audience in the conversation. Don't forget, afr.net. You can audio stream the program live. You got a friend or family member in the Pacific Northwest looking for a beacon of light in the spiritual darkness up here. This is one of the least churched regions in the United States of America. They can find it at afr.net. Audio stream Focal Point, audio stream our entire talk radio lineup. Also, you can get the AFR Talk app and your app store. Listen to it on the go with your phone. We also have an opinion site, afa.net. That's where my columns get posted. Encourage you to go there and read the stuff that our staff or the thoughts that they're putting up on that website. So anyway, a lot of information there, afa.net and afr.net in particular. Don't forget the email address, focalpoint@afa.net. Focalpoint@afa.net. Now, we've been working through the life of Joseph, and a lot of fascinating wrinkles, a lot of ins and outs to this story. But one of the fascinating parts of this story is Joseph's relationship with his brothers, his relationship with his father, and his father's relationship with his brothers. Remember, his father clearly favorited Joseph. Joseph was his favorite son. He made it very clear, gave him the coat with the long sleeves so everybody knew that he wasn't going to be working in the fields like all the rest of the sons. And the sons got jealous of him. They got resentful of him. They dumped him in a pit and finally sold him into slavery to Ishmaelites who were on their way to Egypt. He winds up in the house of Potiphar, the captain of the guard. His wife falsely accused him of sexual harassment, of sexual assault, and he winds up in prison. But then eventually he's let out of prison. He's elevated to a position of importance and prominence in the kingdom, one of the chief advisors, in fact, second in command in all of Egypt to the Pharaoh himself. Now, the brothers come because there's a famine, and because of Joseph's prescience, because of the help that God had given him, they had made preparations for this time of famine, just as we all should. We all should be setting aside money every month to put it in a reserve account, maybe 6 months of salary, get it on reserve, so something unexpected happens, we have accumulated the resources to deal with that crisis. Well, that's what Joseph did for the entire country of Egypt. So his brothers experienced a famine in Canaan. They weren't doing it there. And so Jacob, the father, sends the sons, everybody, of course, but Joseph, to go to Egypt and get some grain for them so they don't die. So the last time they sent it, and Joseph made sure this, the last time they had to send Benjamin, the young brother. The younger brother was born after he was sold into slavery. He'd never seen him. Insisted that the brothers bring Benjamin, the other youngest brother, with them when they came, the other son of Rachel, who was Jacob's favorite wife. You got to bring him or you're not going to see my face. I'm not going to give you any grain, not going to sell you anything unless I see your kid brother's face. Now, Joseph was testing them here at this point, and we find out in chapter 44 that he put his special silver chalice in the mouth of Benjamin's sack. This is the special chalice so they all they load up their sacks and they go off. And then Joseph sends the armed guard, the Secret Service out there to retrieve the stuff that they were packing and look in their sacks for his silver chalice and for the money. And the brothers are astonished. There's money in their sacks. They'd given it all back. Now Joseph put it right back in there. They didn't know where it came from, but it made them again look like thieves. And they found the silver chalice in Benjamin's sack. Joseph sent his men out with command to overtake them. And then when they find the silver chalice, the special cup in Benjamin's sack, what the guards say, why have you repaid evil for good? You have done evil in doing this. Now, this is the Secret Services out there grilling them, and the brothers say, far be it from your servants to do such a thing. We wouldn't do something like that. We learned our lesson. We would never do anything like this. So whoever, and they didn't know that Joseph had stuck the silver and the gold and the chalice in their sacks, whoever is found with the cup shall die. We will be my Lord's servants. So they said, look, whoever is found with this chalice in their possession, that's theft, that individual, that brother will die for his misdeeds, and we will become your slaves for the rest of our lives. So they went through the sacks, and sure enough, they found the silver chalice in Benjamin's sack. So all the brothers tore their clothes, and they returned to the city. They knew what it would do to their father if they came back without Benjamin, so they didn't just abandon Benjamin because they said, you can go, we're just interested in the guy that actually stole the chalice. So the brothers realized that Benjamin was still the favorite, but notice this, they had reconciled themselves to the reality, to this reality. They realized, look, our father is not going to change. You may have aging parents, and they've got certain quirks and stuff, and you begin to realize, look, they're not going to change. And at some point, you just have to deal with it and accept that the brothers had done that. They accepted as a part of the landscape in which they lived that the sons of Rachel were going to always be Jacob's favorite sons, Benjamin being the one at this point. So part of maturity is recognizing that some people just aren't going to change and accepting that and not chafing against that reality. So they go before Joseph, they walk in, they see him, and they fell before him to the ground, all of them on their faces before Joseph. And remember the dream that Joseph had had where they were out in the field and his sheaf stood upright and the sheaves representing all of the other brothers came and bowed down before him. Well, now it was happening. The dream that he'd had 20 years ago was now coming to fruition, coming to reality. So remember, Joseph had to wait 20 years before this plan and purpose that God had revealed to him came to fruition. So be patient with God. He's working out his purpose for you, working out his purpose for your life. Now, Judah steps into the picture at this point. He was the one that took the lead in selling Joseph into captivity, the youngest son, into slavery. Now, Judah's the one who takes the lead in protecting Benjamin, the second and youngest son. So whereas Judah before, this is a sign of maturity and growth in him, before he had taken the lead in selling the youngest son into slavery, now he takes the lead in protecting the youngest son and his life. But Joseph said to the brothers, look, only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my servant. The rest of you go up in peace to your father. So again, he was testing them because if they were willing to sell out their youngest brother, the problem would be solved. But Judah says, look, if he takes Joseph aside and says, look, if you take this one also from me and harm happens to him, You will bring down my gray hairs in evil to Sheol. That's what Jacob had said to Judah before they left. If you take this one, if you take Benjamin from me, you will bring down my gray hairs in evil to Sheol. Said, I lost my firstborn, torn to pieces by a wild animal. I'll never see him again. I cannot bear to lose my youngest son. So Judah said to Joseph, look, his life, my father's life, is bound up in the boy's life, and as soon as he sees that he is not with us, he will die. This will be a non-survivable event for my dad. So Judah says, look, your servant, he gives up his own freedom, gives up his own liberty, gives up his own future in order to do the right thing by his youngest son. Your servant, he says to Joseph, will become a pledge of safety. Well, he said this to Jacob, actually the father, if I do not bring him back, I shall bear the blame before my father all of my life. That's what Judah told Jacob before they left on this journey to Egypt. So he shows remarkable growth, remarkable change. So now instead of forfeiting his youngest brother's life to save his own life, now he's willing to put his own life at risk for the sake of his father and his youngest brother. So he says to Joseph, please let your servant remain as a servant and let the boy go back with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would find my father. Well, let's take some of these themes and go to the Lord in prayer. Lord God, when we read the story of Joseph's early years, we see that his brothers banded together to destroy him as the youngest brother. Now, years later, we see these same brothers banding together to save their youngest brother. And just as Judah took the lead in selling Joseph into slavery, so now he takes the lead in protecting Benjamin. I pray for myself. I pray for my family. I pray for the listening audience of Focal Point and American Family Radio. I pray for every man, woman, and child in this listening audience right now, this day. Pray for our mayors, for our governors, and for our president, President Trump. And I pray that all of us will grow in maturity and strength as Joseph's brothers did. I pray that we will learn from our mistakes and that our progress will be evident to others who observe the changes in us over time. I pray that when we are severely tested, we will face each challenge with the resolve to do what is right regardless of the cost. I pray that you will band us together as members of your church, as Joseph's brothers were bound together. May we come together to help a brother who is in trouble and surround him with our protection and our prayers. I pray that we will be willing to lay down our lives for our brothers, as Judah was. Grant us the same concern for others that Judah had for his father, and the same desire to use our resources to alleviate the heartache and misery of our parents and of others. Lord, Judah and his brothers were bewildered by the false accusations that were made against them. And so, Lord, there may be times when we are falsely accused, or when we are facing difficult circumstances that are confusing and hard to understand. I pray that we will handle ourselves always with such character that any charges against us will be seen to be patently false. Please vindicate the integrity of our character and conduct, bring each of us safely through the time of trial, and set our feet on a rock. This I ask in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, let's turn our attention to a couple of items that are follow-ups to stories we've done before. Republicans in Texas are getting ready to do something about this transgender business with kids. Remember, we had this story about a mom was going to castrate her 7-year-old son, either physically or chemically, because that's what you do when you go through the gender transition that they talk about. And she was going to do it against the wishes of the boy's father. A jury and a judge found in favor of the mom. There was such an outcry that the judge had to reconsider and awarded them joint custody, which means they have to agree on medical decisions for the child. The problem with this, as soon as they disagree, they're going to be right back before the same judge. But Texas lawmakers, we're going to pass a law that makes it illegal to do this transition business with a child who's a minor.
Therefore, I will always be ready to
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Focal Point is the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. Give just a couple of stories to update us on the whole al-Baghdadi situation. Number one, we got the name of the hero dog. Maybe you heard this. The name of the dog, it's a female dog. Her name is Conan, and she's named actually after the late-night comedian, not after Conan the Barbarian. And she's a Belgian something or other breed. Same breed that went after bin Laden. So this dog apparently very gifted at this kind of thing. You know, Newsweek pointed out this week that there was the first dog in U.S. Army history to be assigned a rank, and they are non-commissioned officers. These dogs, so it's officer dog, it's sergeant dog. These officers are non-commissioned officers, and they usually have a higher rank than the dog's handlers. But they are specialized at finding these improvised explosive devices. So this dog would have recognized that al-Baghdadi was strapped up with this explosive device, this IED, in which he blew himself up. The first non-commissioned officer dog was in World War I, first time they were granted a military rank. So anyway,
Brian,
Jeff?
And do you find it somewhat soothingly fitting that that al-Baghdadi was actually chased down by a dog, and considering that in Islam they consider them dirty and unclean, and
yeah, that'd be the worst possible insult you could have if you're a Muslim, and if you're a hardcore guy, you're willing to kill infidels for Allah like Baghdadi was. This would be the worst way you could possibly
a female dog
go.
on top of that.
Yeah, get cornered by a dog. That'd be the worst way to possibly go. In fact, we'll play a couple of sound bites. Well, this is a problem for people on Al Jazeera. They don't like this. They think this was rude, crude, and socially unacceptable for the United States to send a dog after this guy. Remember, the Washington Post in their first headline referred to him as an austere religious scholar. Nothing about him being a terrorist. Nothing about him blowing up people. He was an austere religious scholar. They finally had to pull it down because of the blowback. Now, here's a story on yahoo.com. And again, this is about these ISIS prisoners. Remember, there's about 10 or 12,000 of them. And the Kurds are running this detention center, about 12,000 in there. And the whole point of this article, I'm going to just touch on a couple of things, is to make us feel sorry for the Islamists, the people that want to kill us and blow us up and take our liberties from us. And that's the whole point of this thing from Yahoo, make us see these people as victims. Their eyes are empty, they are haggard, scrawny prisoners in orange jumpsuits, and they go on to say they come from dozens of countries that do not want them to be free. But they don't want to take them back either. You got Britain, Germany, France. A lot of these guys that are in there are from those countries. And their home countries where they came from do not want to take them back. Again, another reason why I believe we ought to just suspend Islamic immigration altogether. Donald Trump suspended immigration from 7 Islamic countries that we know are hotbeds of terrorism. We ought to do that with every Islamic country. Obviously, things have been quieter in the United States since Donald Trump has done this. Remember, we talked yesterday, 1 immigrant from Libya. 10 from one other Muslim country. So it works. Immigration control works. It's what keeps us safe. But anyway, Yahoo wants to make us feel guilty that we've done this to these poor insurgent Muslims who don't want to do anything more than just kill them some infidels. Now, the stench in here, according to Yahoo, is overwhelming, and the stench in the nearby medical ward is overwhelming, where if you're a visitor, they give you a surgical mask at the door before you even go in. Most of the prisoners there are skin and bones. It reveals the dire conditions experienced by the final denizens of the jihadist caliphate when it made its last stand in the Baghouz district. So again, final denizens is just to stir our hearts and make us feel sorry. Well, I don't want anybody in that. I don't want to see anybody in that situation. But my word to them, hey, if you didn't want to wind up like this, don't try to kill us. Don't try to go out there and kill infidels. If you do, this same thing could very well happen to you, and I don't want to hear you say that nobody told me. So one guy, his name is Asil Matan. I want to leave the prison and go back home to my family. He's from Wales. He's a native of Wales. He just wants to go home and see his mom. He's 22 now. He was 17 when he got into this. He went down there to join his brother in Mosul. And he's saying now, I wish he hadn't answered the call to jihadi arms in 2014 issued by Baghdadi. And he had this interview before Baghdadi blew himself up. Now, the Kurds who were running this detention camp, they said there's more than 50 nationalities that are represented in these prisons where more than 12,000 suspects are held, and these countries don't want them back. They don't want them to come home. And Donald Trump says, well, we're not going to take them. We're not going to take care of them. They belong to you. They're from your country. They're your citizens. You have a responsibility to take care of these people. We are not going to do your job for you. By the way, Bernie Sanders is out there saying, hey, we need to give some money to Hamas. Hamas is a terror organization. They're running Gaza. They're running the Palestinians. And Bernie Sanders wants to give them some of the $3.8 billion that we send to Israel in aid. Now, Hamas has been ruled by a terrorist group since 2007, and Palestinian Authority, Gaza has not had a democratic election since 2005. Plus, they've launched thousands of rockets at Israeli civilians, and their schools there indoctrinate Palestinian children to hate Israel and hate America. Here's your Religion of Peace update. I mean, people know. People know around the world. People in the West, they know that we are fooling around. When we fool around with Islam and we make place in our cultures for people who follow Muhammad, it's just a suicide mission. Here are a bunch of people in a theater, the biggest theater in France. They're watching The Joker, 9:30 showing, halfway through The Joker. Some 34-year-old guy stands up. We're not giving his name, but you don't have to be too creative to figure out what it's going to sound like. He started saying, it's political. Several times he said, it's political, it's political. So the viewers around him said, look, we just want to watch this movie in peace, even though it's an R-rated movie and graphic. It's the highest rated R movie of all time, apparently, or the most profitable one of all time. So when people told him to shut up, he stood up, put his hands on his chest, where you'd think he might be keeping an explosive device, and he started screaming, Allahu Akbar, and then mumbling in Arabic. Well, naturally, everybody fled for the exits. All right, well, let's grab some sound bites that touch on this whole subject of Baghdadi. And let's go to Al Sharpton, clip number 1. And you heard some highlights from this sound bite. Jeff put it together in the opening. And here's Al Sharpton doing his best. This guy needs a pronunciation guide. They need to put it on his cue sheets in front of him. And with a reminder to say it slowly and pronounce it syllable by syllable. Here's Al Sharpton, untethered from a dictionary, untethered from a pronunciation guide, talking about Baghdadi.
President Trump said that because of the killing of al-Baghdadi, that the world is a better place. And I would give credit to he and those that were responsible for it. But we have a lot of work that must still be done in the area of terrorism. Those domestic terrorists that are bent on hate and are bent on white supremacy and anti-Semitism and racism and homophobia. We've got to fight terrorism, hate, and people taking people's lives on all fronts.
Now, I want you to notice there how Al seamlessly blended us into the group that he identifies as terrorists. He talks about those that are bent on white supremacy. This organization, American Family Association, has been branded by the SPLC as a white supremacist group. Absolutely untrue, but that's the way they branded us, and people like Al Sharpton are liable to believe that, equating us with terrorists that blow themselves up and their children in tunnels. They accuse us of being guilty of racism. We don't believe in race-based preferences. We think that entrance to elite universities ought to be based on merit and not on skin color, just like Martin Luther King believed. Then we're accused of being racists. And if we believe that maybe homosexuality is not a lifestyle that ought to be normalized, ought to be celebrated, ought to be promoted, then we are guilty of homophobia. You know, there's a story here out of St. Louis County. This would be up in St. Louis, Missouri, where a police officer just got $20 million because his out, open, and flagrant homosexuality was creating a problem in the workforce and was limiting his access to promotions. He didn't like it. He was just too gay for the job. And so he sued St. Louis County for $20 million, and he got it. So this police sergeant, based on homophobia, real or otherwise, got a $20 million judgment against St. Louis County. And now the St. Louis County Council, county officials, are going to retool the complete police department, overhaul from the top down. County officials have heard the jurors' message. This is from San Francisco, or the Washington Post, actually, and has said that change must start at the top. So they're going to begin the process of a complete overhaul of the police board. And here's what one of the officials said. Got to go to page 3 for this. Another witness who at one point was an executive assistant to the deputy chief of police, Kenneth Gregory, said he heard Kenneth Gregory mention to somebody that the Bible says that homosexuality is an abomination. Now, that's an absolutely true fact. That's what the Bible says. It says it in more than one place, that homosexuality is an abomination. So now notice that if you believe that, you will not be eligible ever to serve in the police department of St. Louis County. So the only people you're going to get in the police force there are people that are homosexuals or who are sympathetic to the homosexual lifestyle. That is going to make your police force weaker and less able to protect the citizens. All right, and again, reminder that good news out of Texas, lawmakers there are going to pass laws against putting children through these gender transition treatments, the hormone treatments, and the surgery. Let's drop down to... I guess that's all I've got. Let's go back to Baghdadi. Clip number 4. This is Al Jazeera. This is what I was telling you about. Notice the warning that they're sending about us bringing al-Baghdadi to justice. Clip 4.
The president did something that we don't see U.S. presidents do. He used language that is going to really incite Baghdadi's followers. If they hear it, he called him a dog, said he died whimpering like a coward, said he wished he could show the video so that people could see exactly how he died. Let's not forget the president saying that there were 3 of Baghdadi's children with him when that vest was detonated. He gave a lot of details about that, used very crass language, again, called him a dog. And then he did say that they took pieces of his body with them, with the Special Forces soldiers, when they left. Again, there's concern by some in Washington analysts that this is not the kind of language you wanted to use unless the goal is to really incite the people who followed him. So that's been a bit of a concern here in Washington.
Well, apparently that's a concern in Washington. It's not a concern to me. I don't think it's a concern to you. And this is why Trump's base, and it wasn't a concern to Trump, obviously, and this is why his base is loyal to him. They like his brash honesty about things like the threat of Islam. They like the fact that he cares enough about our safety to ban Muslim immigration from 7 nations around the world in order to keep us safe. But again, Al Jazeera, this is terrible for somebody to do this. This could incite the bad guys. Notice what they're saying. They're admitting that their fellow religious travelers want to kill infidels. And this is the kind of language they say will set them off. So they're agreeing with us about the nature of this religious tradition.
Calling a terrorist a bad word is going to incite, like they need an excuse.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And like they wouldn't do it to us if we didn't incite them like this.
Yeah. Makes no sense.
Here's Representative Ro Khanna, clip number 5, and he's warning Trump against taking a victory lap over the death of one of America's #1 international enemies. Clip 5.
I hope he will tone down the rhetoric. There's no reason to gloat over it and insult Baghdadi and let that video be a recruiting tool for ISIS or Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, we back in World War II, we just got to stop killing them Nazis. You kill them Nazis, that's just going to help Hitler recruit. Got to stop doing that. Not smart. Wouldn't be prudent. All right. A couple of quick updates on the cannabis front. A lot of people are fascinated, hooked on CBD. That's cannabinoid, cannabidinabidol, something or other. It's one of the ingredients in pot. And an Australian study, they looked at 83 previous studies over 4 decades on medical cannabinoids, because they're supposed to be good for depression, they're supposed to be good for anxiety, they're supposed to be good for attention deficit disorder. They could find none, 0, zip, nada. 83 studies, not one showed any medical benefit to using cannabinoids. It's just an excuse, ladies and gentlemen, for drug use. That's all this CBD stuff is, an excuse for drug use. So there's just no reason to use it, they're saying. This is based on this study. The risk of developing a dependence upon cannabis is the biggest risk. Cannabis, those who use cannabis regularly, may be at increased risk of developing depression and psychosis. It's bad for you. Back right after this.
Here's Twyla Brace, president of CCHF.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Howdy, welcome back to Focal Point, the home of the fastest 60 minutes in American media, heading for the checkered flag, so buckle up. Here's another story from a website called studyfinds.org talking about cannabidiol, I don't even know how you say it, cannabidiol, which is known as CBD, the abbreviation for this cannabidiol. I'm sounding like Al Sharpton here. Thanks for the primer, Al. I appreciate it. I'm trying to imitate you as one of my mentors and idols. Cannabidiol, better known as CBD, is the second most prevalent active compound in marijuana. And again, this article is published in the Journal of the American Association Network Open. That's the publication where this is found. But they're saying, look, this is this generation snake oil. This CBD, it is no better than snake oil, despite its insane popularity. So, and it's crazy how people are going after this thing. In comparison to acupuncture, CBD searches were more popular by 749% than acupuncture, more popular by 517% than apple cider vinegar, which, by the way, my bride swears by it. It's pretty much heal anything that ails you. We haven't tried it on a broken bone yet, but she's probably going to think might do some good even there. 338% more popular than meditation searches, 63% more than vaccinations, 59% more than exercise, 13% more than regular marijuana, and 12% more than veganism. Dr. Davy Smith, Chief of Infectious Diseases and Global Public Health at UC San Diego, said this: there are no known benefits at this time for taking CBD over the counter. CBD is this generation's snake oil, where millions are engaging with the product without evidence of any kind of benefit. All right, let's go back to al-Baghdadi just for a moment. NPR has come to his defense. They're praising him. This is our taxpayer dollars at work at NPR. They call him a real leader. That's their phrase, a real leader. Did something that we've never seen before. They controlled massive amounts of territory. They had millions of people under their control. They administered, this is all quotes, they administered cities. They collected taxes. They had this incredible online recruit presence. This is a guy that led this group and has done something that we have never seen before. This isn't the end of ISIS, but he was a real leader. His leadership was crucial. Where are they going to find another guy to provide that kind of inspirational leadership for al-Baghdadi's groups and for ISIS? One of the other people groups that's involved in that part of the world that we talk about, think about, are the Kurds. And Jeff, you got a little bit of an update for the Reed Report today on the Kurdish people.
Yeah, I've been checking into this a little bit after your article you wrote just recently about Trump withdrawal from Syria, and many took that as a betrayal of our allies, the Kurds. Many in the West think of the Kurds as idealistic freedom fighters, and it's not necessarily true. I was checking back in some stories, and we realized that they've had some pretty bad things. They've done some pretty bad things in their time. And again, there's different factions of the Kurds. I'm talking about the Kurdish Peshmerga, which is kind of related to the region of Iraq. But they had moved in 2014, they moved in to kind of stop the advance of ISIS. And they told the people of the Nineveh plains, they actually forced them to disarm themselves with the promise that they would protect them. They didn't want anything rising up from them against the Kurds, so they forcibly disarmed them, promised to protect them. And you may remember this, as soon as ISIS attacked the Nineveh plains, they didn't fire a shot, and they retreated way back, just basically left them all defenseless, and the slaughter endured. It was a betrayal of the biggest kind. Many people have come to the conclusion, and they can only see they see it as a deliberate ploy to use ISIS to help cleanse that area of religious minorities. I mean, we're talking about the Assyrians, the Yazidis, and Christians in that area. Abandoning them to genocide, and then becoming allies with the U.S. to help them take that territory back, and now it'll be their land, and it'll be the religious people that they disagreed with will not be there anymore, and that's something the Kurds have always wanted, is a land of their own.
Well, you see why Donald Trump said, look, these people are not angels. He was talking about the Kurds. He said, look, the Kurds are not angels. And here's an example of what he was talking about, the Peshmerga. And again, so who, according to Jeff's report here, who were the first people that abandoned the Kurds? It was the Kurds. Talking them into dropping their weapons and then abandoned them as soon as ISIS started showing up. All right, thanks for that report, Jeff. I appreciate it.
They made that promise up until the last minute. They said, don't worry, we're going to protect you. And as soon as they moved in, they left without firing a shot.
They were out of there. All right. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that. Back to domestic issues. Joe Biden, by the way, and I give a lot of credit to the priest of this Catholic church. Joe Biden was denied communion Sunday at a church in Florence, South Carolina, a Roman Catholic church. in Florence, South Carolina, because of his support for abortion. That's official church policy. Comes from the Vatican. You got somebody in your church, some politician that supports abortion, votes for abortion, wants to fund abortion. He must be denied communion. Here's finally a priest that had the courage to actually do it. All right, well, let's grab a couple of other sound bites on this whole impeachment front. Democrats now are moving away from this. They're going to have a vote tomorrow on making this whole thing public and transparent. What does this mean? It means that Donald Trump is winning the battle. This is Trump 1, Nancy Pelosi nothing. They had no intention of making this public, but now it's starting to cost them because the American people are saying, what do they have to hide? We don't know what anybody's saying back there. The only thing we know that's happening inside this closed-door room, locked up, supposed to be just for top secret intelligence communications. Well, there is no intelligence stuff that's being communicated inside this compartmentalized room. So obviously there's some other reason for using that room. And that, you can't take cell phones in there. Nobody can take pictures. Nobody can take recording. They don't want anybody on the outside to know what's being said or done in there. So you'll have somebody go in there for 10 hours and the Democrats will give you maybe 30 seconds, 45 seconds of what one of the guys in there said. You have no idea what questions he was asked, no idea of the context of his remarks, and the American people are finally getting restless enough that Nancy Pelosi said to Adam Schiff, look, we better open this thing up, so they're going to vote on doing that tomorrow. Now here, clip number 2, here is Nicole Wallace of NBC talking to our old friend James Comey, the guy that I thought when this whole thing started, I honestly gave him the benefit of the doubt. I believe James Comey was a straight shooter. I believed his reputation in the press, that he would just follow the evidence, follow the law wherever it took him. Found out he's hopelessly bent, and he was part of the coup d'etat. He knew that the Steele dossier contained a lot of salacious and unverified information. Those are his words. He said that. Steele dossier, it's salacious and unverified, but that was the basis for getting the FISA warrant to start surveilling, spying on Donald Trump and his team. James Comey signed off on that thing, knowing, and that's perjury. If you sign something and a FISA warrant, you got to sign on oath that you believe everything in here has been verified and confirmed. And he said, nothing in here. It's all salacious and unverified. So he's in potentially big, big trouble. Anyway, here's Nicole Wallace asking James Comey, talking about the Mueller investigation. And her question to him is, do you think when Mueller started this thing, he was expecting it, hoping that it would lead to impeachment? Here's their exchange.
Do you think that Mueller and people on his team expected that report to trigger the commencement of an impeachment inquiry?
I do. Yeah, I think they make clear that they're laying out the obstruction pattern for 2 reasons. First, for future prosecutors. They actually essentially say that, which is really interesting language. That is, we can't charge this person now, but we want to collect all this so that, is the way I read it, when he can be charged, the evidence has been gathered, and second, so that the constitutional responsibilities of Congress can be discharged. I forget the exact language, but that's the gist of it.
So in other words, Comey was in on this from the beginning, knew what they were doing. The whole point of this was to launch a coup d'etat, make it look constitutional, give it the appearance of legality, but the whole thing was intended to be a coup d'etat from day one. Now, James Comey, later in that conversation with Nicole Wallace, says, well, what are you going to do? She asked him, what are you going to do if Donald Trump wins re-election? Clip 3.
What if he wins again? Will you still believe that?
I will be, from my new home in New Zealand, I will, but I still will believe in America.
Well, if he's going to move to New Zealand, he'd better get moving before Bill Barr throws him in prison, because that's where he's headed because of the investigation of John Durham and Bill Barr. They're closing in, and it's not going to be pretty for those that get caught in that net, because those guys are honest sheriffs. They are straight shooters. They are going to follow the evidence wherever it takes them, and that's not going to be good news for James Comey. All right, let's go to clip number 7. Brett Baer talking to David Perdue, senator from Georgia, asking him about this impeachment thing. Where is it going? I've told you from the beginning, I don't even think impeachment is going to happen. Now, maybe I'm wrong about that. I said that the Democrats know it's a loser. They know they're not going to be successful with an impeachment. Nancy Pelosi knew that. That's why she was dragging her heels on impeachment all the way along. So maybe they are going to do an impeachment thing. Maybe it's too late for them to stop this train. But here's Brett Baer talking to David Perdue about the chances of an impeachment conviction. Clip 7.
Is there any chance in your mind that the president could be convicted in a Senate trial?
Not a chance in Brett.
Zero. You've already made up your mind.
Absolutely. I've seen the evidence. There's nothing that rises to the level of impeachment. And look, this is a clear example of the continued obstructionism to try to undo a duly elected president from 2016, Brett.
All right, so he said not a chance. Not a chance in boop that Donald Trump is going to be convicted. That's what I told you. You've got 50 Republicans have signed a letter complaining about this closed-door process. The only ones that didn't sign it were Mitt Romney, who's a total squish. He's a total swamp creature, so he's not going to sign it because he detests Donald Trump because Donald Trump didn't make him Secretary of State. Then you've got Lisa Murkowski, you've got Susan Collins. Those folks are regressives from Jump Street. They're not going to sign anything like this, but that still leaves 50 that are against impeachment. And you got to get 67 people. Most you've got right now is 50, top end. You still need to get 17 votes for someplace else. 20 Republicans have to vote to convict him to get it. It just is not going to happen. All right, here is the second exchange. Brett Baer, David Perdue, clip 8.
They're denying the absolute truth that this president's getting results. He's fighting for the people back home. And that's what I think Nancy Pelosi is responding to here is this outcry in the bigger part of the country outside of Washington, D.C., where people are saying, look, this process is unfair. I think by her calling for this vote, she's admitting that the process has been unfair to the president.
I don't think she's right. I think this is Nancy Pelosi basically surrendering at the first sound of gunfire. She knows they're in big trouble, that this behind closed doors thing reminds you of something you'd read about in the Soviet Union, not in a free, democratically elected republic. So I think she's finally conceding on this score. Looks bad, and it looks bad. You know why? Because it is bad. All right, Matt Gaetz, Representative Matt Gaetz, clip number 9. Great statement here about who's innocent and who's guilty. Listen to this. This is the takeaway for today.
I think what you see, Sean, is that Donald Trump is innocent and the deep state is guilty. And when you've got Mr. Durham out there with an investigation that transitioned from an administrative review to a criminal investigation, that is a hat tip that there was some catalyzing event that caused the Attorney General and Mr. Durham to seek the ability to have that criminal process at their disposal. I also think Durham probably frightens the deep state a lot more than even the FISA review, because the Durham investigation is the investigation that goes deepest into the Obama White House. And so that's where I think you'll see people like Clapper and Brennan implicated.
And probably James Comey. Those folks are likely to be implicated because this thing started in the Obama White House. So that was a very significant development. I don't know if you can overstate the significance of Durham and Barr turning their investigation into a criminal investigation. They're looking to charge people. They're looking to indict people because that's what they're discovering is the evidence points in that direction. Here's a blessing for the end of the program today. To this end, we always pray for you that our God may make you worthy of his calling and may fulfill every resolve for good and every work of faith by his power, so that the name of our Lord Jesus may be glorified in you and you in him. See you tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the